1. Long story short, I work in a chemist's. Across a narrow road from said chemist is the local high school. Down the end of said road is the doctor's surgery. Between the chemist and the school, there is a speed bump that acts as a crossing. One day while I was restocking shelves, I looked out of the door towards the school as I heard the kids coming out for lunchtime. I turned to confirm the source of the noise when on the opposite side of the road was a woman wearing a blue t-shirt, light faded jeans, glasses, looked obese, and looked somewhere in their late 40s, early 50s. Having someone on this side of the road is, in and of itself, not that unusual. However, what struck me was the fact that she seemed to stare right at me. Our windows and doors are very big, so it's not difficult to see a person through them from a distance. At first I dismissed it as she was just looking at the shop. But when I moved, her gaze moved too. She was staring right at me. I've lived in this town for most of my life, and I didn't recognize her. Although I felt a little uncomfortable, I just continued to move around the shop, her gaze following me intensely as I did. Eventually she pointed in what seemed my direction. This did make me feel uncomfortable, as it felt she was picking me out for a reason I was at present unaware of. To try and show that I wasn't nervous, I moved to the window and stared back at her. I was standing just to the right of the window's right-hand frame, but I continued staring back at her. Then, almost robotically, still fixated on me, she started to cross the road, locking on me as she did. She didn't check whether a car was coming or not, she just walked. I have to be honest, although it probably shouldn't have, I was filled with dread the closer she came. At the moment she finished crossing the road, a woman walked in front of her, almost as if she didn't notice she was there. As a result, this woman had obscured the crossing woman. Less than a second after this obscuring, I moved to the other side of the frame, so it was now to my right. The woman who had obscured was walking towards the shop, but the woman who crossed vanished, without a trace. Now I understand that many people won't believe me on this, I wouldn't if I was reading this, and I guess most will say, well, she was behind the woman then, clearly. Only she wasn't. I cannot explain enough how she was there and not there, with less than a second between the two. I do not suffer hallucinations or delusions. I have not been referred for any psychiatric treatment in my life, and nor am I a firm believer in the paranormal or the supernatural. However, I know what I saw, and what I saw was a woman who fixated on me, crossed the road, became obscured, and then vanished less than a second later. I may not believe in the paranormal, but I am open to the concept of universal simulation, and after weeks of thinking about this and pondering it, I can't help but wonder if it could be a glitch of some kind. A satisfactory explanation would be very appreciated. Thank you in advance. 2. A couple nights ago, I was kicked back in the living room binge-watching Lost in Space on Flicks. My son was in his room engrossed on Steam with his friends. Suddenly I am startled by a loud crash coming from the master bathroom. I get up, run in there in time to see my son taking off his headphones from his bedroom, and we asked each other what that was. And we both answered no idea. We got up and looked around the room, and I went into the bathroom, seeing nothing until I looked behind the bathroom door on the floor, and see a little hand mirror on the floor shattered. I was dumbfounded by how the hell that even happened. The door was not pushed back against the wall, nor was it closed. It was roughly 45 degrees, kind of opened part way. When it's opened against the wall, the edge is a few inches from the vanity counter of the bathroom sink. But it always kept toward the back of the counter, and in a spot behind some bottles and other things left out on the counter. Yet it managed to somehow not only move at least a foot from its spot on the counter to off the counter, it was on the floor nearly 2 feet from the counter. So we both looked around for a mouse or something that had to have pushed it off, but found nothing. We have no clue how it happened, or how it could have happened. There is no wind. Even from the AC vent there wouldn't be enough to push it off the counter. It'd have fallen over first. Nothing else was displaced, so it had to be picked up and moved over those items before dropping on the floor. We laughed uncomfortably, but we have no idea how it happened or what took place. All the reasonable, common-sense, reality-based explanations were ruled out. I just stopped there and left it as I guess I'll never know. First time. But then I recall this has happened to me 2 times before in my life. Once when I was about 10 years old, and I'd been the last one to go to bed. Used to stay up watching the late movie. I had a glass of whatever I was drinking, finished it when the movie ended, and put it on the counter in the kitchen by the sink, toward the back. I turned out all the lights behind me, but as I reached the bedroom door I heard a crash. I bolted around, turned the lights on ahead of me, and when I reached the kitchen, I see the glass on the floor in the middle of the room. It wasn't a case of it fell over and rolled, dropped a foot or so from the edge. It was in the middle of the room. And it was smashed to bits like somebody picked it up and overhanded slammed it down till it shattered to slivers. I got scared. Not that anyone was in the house alive or dead, but that my parents would think I broke it and I'd get in trouble. I cleaned it up and hid the pieces in the trash under stuff and went back to my room. I pondered it till I fell asleep but had no explanations. Second time. In my early 20s, when I'd moved into my second apartment ever, 2 things happened along the same lines during the same several-month period. I had a small tumbler, one of those NFL glasses that were popular in the 80s, and had set an empty glass on the counter toward the back of the counter, specifically because of the childhood incident, and to know I put it far back enough it wouldn't fall off. It was me and my first son, who wasn't a year old at the time, but wasn't there this night. I was alone. I was chilling one night and heard a crash and clang from the kitchen. I went in there to find the glass actually in the sink, broken in a couple of big chunks. I had no explanation for it, and it freaked me out. It did not roll off into the sink. It wasn't top-heavy. There was no wind, the cabinet was level, and I put it far enough back from the edge of the counter, but certainly not on the edge of the sink. I was at a loss. Third time. A few months later, a friend from work was over hanging out, and when we were sitting at the dining table chatting, he started saying he felt a cold spot in the space beside him. That led to a mildly entertaining chat about cold spots and ghosts, which led to a rundown on some of our creepy experiences, which inevitably led to me telling him about the breaking glass experiences. He lit up and said he's had similar experiences, and before he even got a word out to tell me the story, crash! I know I turned pale at the implications there, and we got up and both went into the kitchen. Another NFL tumbler had shattered, but it was inside the cabinet itself. It hadn't fallen out. It was on the shelf inside the cabinet over the dishwasher. At least with that one and the fact it was an NFL tumbler, I felt more sane, deciding the glasses were badly made, and at certain normal temperatures they explode. I had no explanation for the childhood event. I have no explanation for the broken mirror the other night. It's not so much the glass breaking that is freaking me out. I can chalk it up to molecular structure and temperature or something. It's that the glasses or mirror were not on or near the edge, not weighted to fall and roll, and that they were farther off from where they'd naturally fall. That doesn't make sense, and I cannot come up with a reasonable explanation for it. My brain is insisting it'd be otherworldly, even though I am a rationalist, atheist, don't believe in gods, devils, spooks, and spirits. Anyone else have these kinds of breaking glass experiences, or theories as to what might be causing them? 3. I have super vivid memories from childhood, more than a couple, so I know it wasn't a dream. I was around caring family at the time, so it wasn't me falling and just getting ignored. I recall falling down on my back or side, and the pain and vividly what my eyes saw, but I don't recall anyone helping me up or getting up. For example, I remember one Halloween I was old enough to have clear memory. We were trick-or-treating and I tripped on a porch and landed sideways. I remember laying there hurt, and have a clear picture of what my eyes saw, but no other memories tied to it. My mom was neurotic, overprotective, and would tell me stories about me getting hurt as a kid and worried. But she's never told me about that Halloween, and I don't remember anything about her panicking or picking me up. We went with my cousins who were like sisters, and they would have panicked and talked about it for years. I just recall what my eyes saw every millisecond as I fell, and what I saw as I laid there, on my side and head. The memory is maybe 5 to 10 seconds long. I remember clearly what the fall felt like, what the trip felt like, just as clearly as every other time of getting hurt. Even freakier, I remember exactly what I was wearing. It was a blue princess dress. However, under the age of 5, I was always an animal or fairy. The first time I was a princess was years after that. I remember that I picked out the same blue dress. Another time would be when I was between 8 to 12. I arranged a very nice church program. The most caring and respectful people probably on earth. I was dancing with my group on the carpet. My mom and all the parents were in the chairs watching us. Staff were either dancing with us or playing music. I remember dancing and falling back into one of those easel paper stands. One of the legs snapped and broke. It's the only one they had because they were poor budget, trying to handle many programs at once. I recall every millisecond of it. What my eyes saw as I fell back and hit my head, and as I laid there in pain. I remember very, very vividly laying there for 5 to 10 seconds, with a twisted wrist and hurting head, just watching everyone dance obliviously around me, and watching the parents sitting there smiling obliviously. I don't have any memory of being helped up or anyone doing anything about it. Just falling and laying there. My best friends and the other parents genuinely don't remember it, and assumed maybe it happened on a day that they missed the program. I went back next program, a week later, and the easel wasn't broken. It had the same content, was the same easel. They couldn't afford another one so easily. No one paraded to see if I was okay or for information. Is this a constant glitch in the Matrix? Or maybe a brain problem? I have other examples, but it's mostly the same thing. 4. So Wednesday before last, I'm hanging out with this cute girl and some of her friends at her place having a little party. Had a few drinks, smoked a couple bowls. Later in the night another partygoer and I copped some acid. I took 2 tabs. Sometime around 11 a roommate of the girl's family comes home. He wasn't supposed to be home till next morning. And she wasn't supposed to be having a party, so the festivities, which were supposed to go all night, came to a halt and I had to leave. Didn't really want to go home, so I took a bus to a park downtown. Both downtown and the park are completely deserted, and I am enjoying the solitude and the trip. It was some very mediocre acid, and while I could feel it, and there were visuals, it was far from the intense, overpowering experience I know it can be. This park is right by a river, so it has a path along the water on both sides. I'm walking along one stretch which has a railing on the riverside, and at about the halfway point of the railing I decide to throw a rock into the river because why not? There's a couple 100 feet or so of railing in both directions from where I was standing, which was lit, so I couldn't see clearly all the way to either end of the railing. I pick up a rock, a fairly hefty one, that takes both hands and lob it into the river. The splash is the loudest thing I'd heard all night, and it resonates for a few moments in the dead silence that it broke. Right after the noise of the splash dissipates, I hear the sound of something hitting the bottom of the railing, a ways to my left. It's a thud sort of noise, distinctly 2 solid objects colliding. The railing vibrates for a moment with the impact. I can't quite put my finger on what it sounds like hit the railing. My first impression was of someone kicking the railing with a sturdy pair of boots, a solid thud of an impact, but without the sharpness of rock on metal or metal on metal. The sound was distinctly low to the ground. The railing was 3 horizontal metal tubes at ankle, thigh and hip height, and the noise definitely came from around ankle level. There are loads of rational explanations. I'm very sure it was not an hallucination. The trip was very mild, and the auditory hallucinations I typically experience are always constant, subtle, and very much in the background. The explanation I find most likely is I disturbed some small animal and in running away, it ran right into the railing. I don't know though. My search for the source yielded nothing, and weird things happen when you're tripping. 5. I have experienced too realistic a dream to think about it as a dream. I have no idea if this classifies as a glitch, but here we go. I remember almost everything. I woke up in my home. I had my long hair to the shoulders and a small beard regrowing after a few days without shaving. I went to the bathroom to do the daily thing, washed my hands and went to the kitchen. My mom was still asleep and Dad was at work. I made myself a breakfast and booted up my PC. Started to browse up Facebook, Twitter, reply to my friends on Skype that live in different time zones. Then my friend called. Conversation was like this. "Sup man, wanna hang out somewhere later on? A beer and stuff like usual? Yeah, sure, why not? Maybe after 5 p.m. Alright, see you next to the White House, an alcohol shop." I proceeded to play some Lineage 2 until then. I remember that I looted Zarish's sword, and as soon as I realized that, I logged out with, "Holy fuck, I don't believe that." In the meantime, my mom went off to see Grandma and Dad returned. We weren't talking with Dad, not even hi. Mom came back home around 3 p.m. and brought kebab with her. I goofed off until 10 to 5, and went off to see my friend. We got ourselves 2 beers and walked around for 2 hours before finally sitting down to drink it. We talked about our day, games and shit. I was like, "Man, I can't wait for the new Witcher game and stuff." After a while we went back to our homes. It was near 11 p.m, so I played on the PC some more and went to bed. Now I woke up for real and started crying. I experienced a fucking flashback from 3 to 4 years ago. My mom was still alive. I didn't even talk much to her in my dream or whatever the fuck that was. Does this happen normally? I don't want to experience stuff like this anymore. Now I don't have long hair anymore. I live on my own with my fiancée and daughter. I don't use Twitter anymore, and I don't have any kind of contact with my mates from back then on Skype. I don't play Lineage 2 anymore because all good private servers went off from Interlude to do something else. So I moved on and tried Guild Wars 2. Edit. Everything that happened in the dream did happen, but differently. It seems like I lived that one day but did not recall having it. It's like one of my old me days that both happened and not. I'm confused about this. It's like regaining a memory or something after a few years. Like it happened exactly the day I experienced this flashback. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, episode 65. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Now, we almost didn't have this video today. I was going to have to push it till next week, or maybe later in the week or something. But thankfully, some very kind people came through for us in the end. Right, I wanted to let you guys know that although I haven't done them for a while, I think I'm going to try to put together another 30 True Scary Stories video. It's been a very, very long time since I've done one of those. But if I do it, it won't be going out until later in the year. And the reason for that is, I'll be perfectly honest with you, revenue is better later in the year than it is at the start of the year. So it's much more sensible for me to put it out then than it would be to put it out now. It also gives me much more time to work on it and take my time recording stories and things. I've already began sourcing stories for it. Hitting up Reddit for the medium stories as well, and I'll put a few long ones in there in addition to those. But because it's probably going to take longer to get the stories for it anyway, because these things aren't as widely shared now as they used to be. Although it goes through fits and bursts. Some days you can go there and there's loads of stories. Other days you might find it's been a couple in the past few days. You know, that's just the way it goes. Or at least for the stories I'm wanting to use, I find there aren't as many of them. But that is, of course, going to be a while off. I'm thinking maybe October, November for that. Yeah, that should give me plenty of time to just to put it together and get it all sorted properly. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know that I haven't given up on doing the extra long videos. It's just more practical to not do as many of them, I think. And maybe just one a year is probably a better way to do it. And as for Halloween, of course, we'll be out in October. And I'm not really sure if I've got any plans for Halloween at the moment. But I'm not going to say no, I'm not going to say yes, I'm not going to say no. I don't think I'll be doing an extra long video, but I might try and put together something fun for Halloween. We'll see what I can come up with. I'm just going through one of my thinking periods about things I can do to expand and improve the channel. so you might find some experimental videos going up here and there while I muddle around and decide what's what. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.